I know there's a lot of people, Angel, that could benefit from hearing you talk about identifying religious trauma syndrome in your life, what it is, and how to begin to grapple with it and make and apply some of the breakthroughs to make your life more free and beautiful.
Yeah. Um, I think this topic is very, very nuanced. The first thing that I will say is that religious trauma has nothing to do with God. And I think that that is a very, very important piece. Um, but religious trauma generally has to do with how we were taught to view God and the role that God plays in our life. Um, and so the premise of religious trauma is that you are inherently wrong and the world is wrong. And that's why God had to send, his son in the Christian tradition, or had to send a prophet in other religions, to show you how you are wrong and how the world is wrong. And you are immediately, I'm just going to stay with the Christian vein because that's how I was raised, you are immediately indebted to this God. Like as soon as
And
you come into the world.
that is such a like that's such a it's there. It's like it's right in the open. It's like rule number 1, you are unworthy and damned to hell. Got it? And then now you can go in the building, and it's like so hard. Like, look, honestly, genuinely, all respect to everyone and their personal relationship with religion. But exit the podcast now. But that should be a huge, like, electing a gigantic red flag. This just like turn
Yes.
back now. If the premise of this entire movement, organization, family, whatever, is that you are wrong.
It's just such an aggressive intro into this worldview. And then the flaw with religious trauma is, of course, they set up this omniscient being that you now have to source from. And it's not an internal source, it's an external source. And so you're constantly having to draw from not you, you're incapable, you can't even walk without him holding your hand, but you're constantly having to draw from this external source. And then, and then this external source is what other people tell you it is. So you don't even develop a relationship with God. Like you develop a relationship with somebody who claims to know the mind of God, who
Hmm.
generally is always a terrible person because that's such an aggressive authority grab. And you only make an authority grab like that when you have no authority yourself.
Can
So
I ask
the
a
whole,
question?
yes, go ahead.
How do you get someone to consider that that's a red flag? How do you get someone to, I guess you shouldn't try to force anybody to wake up from the religion or anything, but like, how do you get someone to see that, like, yo, you are damned from the start in this thing, and that's a red flag?
Um, I think what I have learned is it's less about trying to convince people of anything and more reminding them of their own capability. And also, there is a very gigantic flaw in the idea that God made you in his image, and guess what? You're a piece of shit. Okay, so then God's a piece of shit, right? Like,
Maybe, maybe,
right?
maybe God fucked up too,
If
man.
you're made, if God is putting people here in his image, then you come complete.
Yeah.
And your the thing that you want to do is create a personal relationship with God. The thing that you don't want to do is to think of God as other and outside of yourself and under the control of something else, and as someone that will punish you and attack you. So then
Mm.
there's this omniscient being in charge of the whole world that hates you and will attack you if you do anything wrong. And that's just so incorrect and sets you up for such a life of anxiety, um, and like
Yeah.
fear. The whole thing is fear based if you view it that way. But if you remind people that, like, if you're made in the image of God, that means there's a little bit of her inside of you. That means
Mm.
that you have come with everything that you need and all you have to do is bring yourself to life. So, what is it that you like about yourself? What do you think is a godlike quality about yourself? What do you think is your gift? How can you bring that to life? How do you feel peaceful? And drawing people back to themselves will naturally have them start to detach from whoever has claimed authority over their lives, from whoever, if I'm trying to draw you out, if I say, start to believe in yourself and start to think for yourself, and you do, you are naturally going to clash with whoever has determined that they are the authority over your life. Mm-hmm. And at that point, when that starts to happen, is when I would again remind you, like, this person is not God, but you have a personal relationship with God. Like, go back to yourself, go back to your autonomy, go back to the God-given authority you have over yourself. And you don't need to be attached to this person who is claiming to be your access to God, because no one is the source to God. You are the source to God. That's it.
Yeah.
So how can we get people to like return to that knowledge and remembering that like we are all divine, and it doesn't matter what sort of label you want to call it. We're all drinking from the same stream with different cups, and we're arguing over what cup to use. But there is, yes, this divine source, and the unique thing that you have is the thing that you can start to attune back to that source, and that will naturally draw you away from these sort of charlatans that claim to be closer to God than you are,
Yeah, the relationship that we have with our idea of God is one that's given to us by other people, and it's like most it's like we don't think that we have the ability to, as grown-ups, then reevaluate it, because we're still a kid in our thinking. We're like, there's always bigger people, grown-up people who know better than we do, and we rely on this like just idea that the larger group of people have kind of collectively agreed that this is true, and who are we to argue with everybody?
Right.
So we never branch out and begin to, like you're saying, a beautiful thing of begin to listen inwards to find the voice of God, instead of going into a book or listening to a teacher, pulling away and getting quiet. Because if you close your eyes and you get real quiet, whatever you learn about God in that space is so much more valuable than anything you could ever learn from someone else's words. If you like that short clip, make sure to check out the full episode.